poetry, our series of poetry lectures with the overall title Poetry and Politics. And our special guest today is Bei Ling. He's a Chinese poet and author born in Shanghai, who has been active in the 1980s in China and is one of the so-called misty poets. Misty poetry is some sort of poetry which developed after the Cultural Revolution, when the poets in China tried to regain their voice, sort of. But then, unfortunately, there were these events on June the 4th in 1989, the Tiananmen protests. And after these protests, he founded a journal, which was then printed in Beijing in samizdat, but it was, of course, illegal, and he got into trouble, was even jailed for some time. And then he was freed after some very famous colleagues like Susan Sontag interfered. And then he was exiled from China, and since then has been living mostly in Taiwan and in the United States. He has also been the founder of the Chinese Pen Center together with Liu Xiabo. Liu Xiabo, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who has also then had later a very tragic end, as you all know. Well, Bei Ling, I don't want to list all of his works. There are many, and it's easy to find them in the internet if you're interested. He has written countless poems and essays, and also translated many works into Chinese, like works from Susan Sontag, Václav Havel, and Pao Celan. And as you all know, poetry and politics is a very sensitive topic, and it is much more sensitive even when talking about China in this context. So I think Bei Ling is very suited, and I'm looking forward to his important contribution. And now the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I'm very happy, I think it's a specially experience. So middle night have chance with all it's people. I think so most from Europe. So some maybe from China, or no, probably nobody from China, but Xiaobing maybe in Taipei, but I don't know. Normally he sleep a little bit earlier. So yeah, I just want beginning my talk. I think this is my paper. It's people can read it. So I just want to give strongly mention about. So my experience, it's poetry, and it's politics. And also, you probably know I already, came out back to China over 20 years. So I still remember 2000 summer. So I'm from jail directly, sent to airport. So they gave me only several hours, just say you have to live in China because American need you. So you should, it's a help China with American, it's a relationship. So I say, I want to stay Beijing because I'm Chinese citizen. So they say it's no, you only way, you have to leave. So later, just give me half hour, and they from jail stay one night police hotel. So that's not for outside people can stay. So then the morning time gave me half hour, say goodbye with my parents, with my sister, my brother. Then directly drop to Beijing airport. Then fly back to San Francisco. So I since that time until now, I never can reel back to China. Just 2 times I'm in Beijing airport, in 2010 and 2011. I just want to, through Beijing, can stay there, can visiting. but in the airport, in Beijing airport, they do not let me in. So they say, you cannot in. I say, why? They say, you know why. So each time they, I have to stay there for rest, maybe from 2 hours until 3 hours. Then they send me, one time they let me through Beijing, fly to continually fly to Taipei. Second time, 2011. So they do not let me stay in Beijing. They send me back to Frankfurt. Both time I'm in Frankfurt Book Fair. After Book Fair, I try from Frankfurt back to, through Beijing back to Taiwan, or through Beijing going to Taiwan, went to Taiwan. Okay, that means I only have this 2 times stay in Beijing for several hours, but you cannot, walk around, just stay, some rest room. But I still remember is the flight, arrived to Beijing. This make me so emotional. I remember I wrote one memoir, let's say my last time in Beijing, the published in FAZ. So Frankfurt Allgemeine. This is my experience. So if I want to talking about, Chinese literature history about, so poetry or writer with politics, this I think so it's a quite long history. Like my paper, I think so I wish people can read it. So I just mentioned, 2 Chinese last generation famous Chinese writer. They have an interesting dialogue. The dialogue talk about before communist regime in 1949, it controlled China. So in 1948, they both teaching at Peking University. So they want, so think about the communist regime arrived there, but the famous novelist Shen Chongwen, he already know maybe it's tough time study. But another well-known, I should close my, this one, it's, Okay, so in that time, nobody know it's the history, it's what's happening. But in long time, no any writer can real writing without, it's we should say communist, it's a rule. And especially Shen Chongwen stopped writing. Also, he tried writing, but it never success because he feel difficultly follow this new regime. Okay, I give this beginning, just want to let people know our generation, a writer, different with that generation, right? Or either our poet generation. So we started literary writing, it's through underground literature. So that means we do not really think about, we want to publish some official literature magazine, or we want to continually, like before, older generations writer, so can, everything think about the regime, what they want. And that's why lately I talk about, we started writing in Cultural Revolution time. And my age may be a little bit young in that time, but another generation, I mean, currently like around 60 to 70s writer, ages writer, they started writing in underground literature time in, in Cultural Revolution time. The poetry, and I also in my paper mentioned, so how can, strongly get influence from Russia, from the Soviet Union time, lots of Russian poets and writers writing. So lately we have chance reading lots of translation from Czesław work. So I should say, Blonsky writing good essay, mentioned some good writer. For us, it's very strong because I still remember first time we reading and we get his book in 1987 because he win Nobel Literature Prize. Next year, China have chance, publish his work, including his essay and poetry. This we started writing all this kind of work, get a lot of background, not only they work. I also in my paper mentioned like Mangistam and Tsvetaeva, and also some like their colleagues' work. And through it's Czesław essay, we strongly get influence. So Cultural Revolution time, and China still have special publisher, opportunity because Russian and Soviet Union's work through in, Chinese official publishers, they also publish this kind of work. Only for small percentage communist member can read it. But this kind of book in the Cultural Revolution time, not only they read, the children have chance reading, can read. So also for me, I also have this chance reading some kind of this work. Okay, so through this kind of work, we started writing poetry because we never have any opportunity can publish. Just handwriting share in small circle. I gave this essay, gave this talk, including some poet name is Shi Zhi, also Duo and Monk. This kind of writer influence in future we call underground poetry movement. So Christine just mentioned this, we call mystic poetry, but this is an official name. Official government made this name, but in our society, we always see underground poetry because never can either published or something, just in small percentage we are printing and share in circle. After Cultural Revolution time, this kind of book through we call democracy war movement that happening and started in 1978 or 1979. All this kind of book started public because after Cultural Revolution, the book opened, the publication started, but not publish our work, just publish lots of foreign book, especially English and Russian translation to Chinese. So we should say this history, we always think about the poetry with talks, never separately. So I also gave some interesting mention about the Czesław say poetry with politics, only same use one letter, use P. Yeah, that means they never separate, but they focus totally different. So in that time, I think so, we have opportunity get to know all the generations writer. They most work published and writing by before 1949, before communist revolution, from People Republic of China. That kind of book also reprinting and republished in China after 1978. So including, Feng Zhi, this old generation Chinese poet. I mentioned in my essay, talk about him. He got a PhD in Heidelberg University. He's in China. He wrote good poem. It's Lu Xun. It's real, like his special, form poetry called 14行诗. So, but he's stopped writing also in 1949 because he became, it's a Communist Party's member, and more time, not doing translation, doing something. His party gave his job. I still remember we started writing his work. He translates Rilke's poetry. It's for our generation think it's very good because we probably cannot read the original work, but we get chance can through translation taste Chinese language, Chinese translations, good or not good. That situation is very special. In our generation people, most reading foreign literature work through translation, not reading original language work. So lately, I also have chance spend time in America. Also, I have a good experience on Harvard University. So I still remember in that time I teaching Chinese in Harvard. Also, I have some kind of research associate work in Harvard Fairbanks Center. In that time, I probably spent time in Boston over 10 years and have a very good experience with some great English poet and have, friendship. In my essay, also specially mentioned Seamus Heaney. Seamus with me know each other in special day. That day in 1995, he won Nobel Literature Prize that month. In that month, October. So Harvard made a big poetry reading evening called Poetry Night. So Seamus gave reading with another American poet. So like one is very well known. It's a New York poet. Maybe later I should mention his name. So in that day, we listening his reading. I with Meng Lang attending that event. So also get the opportunity, with him have a short time talk. Later, I just started reading his work through our Exile Literature Magazine's team. That team have some good translator. One of poetry editor name is Huang Canran. Later, he translation most Seamus Heaney's essay to Chinese, including our journal, our magazine, and issue 13. So Seamus' work also gave lots of image about translation, how strongly influence English word poet, because through translation, the English word have chance can know Soviet Union, or I should say Russian writer and the Russian poet, how strongly gave to them, strongly shocked. He gave me, it's an interesting story with Czesław friendship. He said it's tough, but get a lot of, it's a good memory. Because I know Sherman's time, Blonsky he probably already died. I remember he's dead in 1996. Later, after 2-3 years, I with Sherman's give, if we have talked, always he gave me some good memory about Blonsky. Okay, I just want to say this kind of experience make me have a chance talking with Sherman's. We have a very good dialogue later. This dialogue, we spent one year finishing, because later Sherman's quit his professor position in Harvard. But every year he gave 1 month stay in Harvard through 1997. So my situation is quite special. I just that time, half time stay in China, half time in America. So that's why I'm in China time, I bring our literature magazine, show people and show, our, it's the underground literature society. And to, police always think about our magazine can get read in different, place in China, in different Chinese city. So that's why later I got trouble until I rest in Beijing. I remember I renting apartment in Beijing through 1998. That means my most time I stay in China and maybe quarter time each year stay in America. So that's why later, I got trouble in China, because I stay more and more time in there. Okay, so I still remember it's in that time I get a rest. Then in China, the police, in my rest time, they told me they have 7 people just research our magazine. The magazine issue 13, especially for Sherman's, and published in 2000. That book we are printing out in Beijing. Just 700 books subscribed in China's bookstore. The China situation is quite special. All publication controlled by government, but the bookstore still have a private, or they cannot real control. They just control publisher house. They do not care independent bookstore and for private, because if a book publisher control, the bookstore, they don't care. But if you are illegal, they call me illegal publisher. If we publish magazine through some printing company, we cannot get subscribed. We have to, one bookstore, another bookstore, just, put some book there, then they want to sell or introduce. Later, the public police immediately know our magazine in there. So they say they spend 7 days to research the magazine, what they say. They say it's too difficult, because we spend over 280 pages talk about Sherman's, not only translating his work, also quite, like a 4 or 5 Chinese poet writing article, talk about Shemus, how influence our writing. That's why I should say it's a Shemus with me, this dialogue called Can Poetry Can Stop Tank? That dialogue, we especially talk about poetry, how influence our generation in our regime. I gave him some hour, essay writing through English translation. He gave good, good answer or good, he say he can know our situation similar like former Soviet Union or communist Russia situation. Okay, so that means in my time, very good through translation, through our work, can good for share this experience. Here, I also want to talk about my colleagues, Motherland. So I want to maybe a little bit show Motherland's photo about, because he just passed away 2 years ago, 57 years old. So, I should say, this book, maybe I should a little bit explaining. This book also talk about my experience in China, including our magazine, how strongly influenced from different, international writer. Or this is my memoir. It's published 9 years ago in Germany. I should say inside, I spent quite more page talk about Susan Sontag with our magazine's friendship. With me, it's a good friendship. Also talk about underground literature. I should say underground poetry movement, how, started in China. That book, I think so maybe, in here scholar can have chance to read. I don't know which people already, get know it's or get read it. Okay, I want to show Motherland's photo. Maybe I should a little bit mention this several photo here. First, this is Shen Chongwen with his wife, that time teaching Beijing University time. I should say Shen Chongwen is the most great novelist before 1949. So also he strongly influenced later Chinese novelists. So, but since 1949, he stopped any kind of literature writing. So we can say we can see some of another few photo, and he's that get old. Maybe could be next one. Next photo. Yeah, that means he stayed in China in Cultural Revolution time. He stayed small house. Most time he stayed by himself. He with his wife in that time not very close. So we can feel in Cultural Revolution time is one great Chinese novelist still, living this kind of life. But I think he's happy because he can spend more time in museum doing his interesting work, doing some special research. Okay, next photo is I think his most latest work. After 94 and after Cultural Revolution time, he's really let people know. But he stopped writing, but he's writing lots of diary. The diary, it's also give us good, view how he spent 40 years since 1949, near 40 years. So the diary may be only his good work after he stopped writing literature, writing novel. Okay, so maybe we can show Meng Lang's photo. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is Meng Lang's photo, yeah. Meng Lang's work very politically. I call him is the most great political poet in our generation because his exile since 1996, he live in China because he's most important Chinese underground poet, never have opportunity to publish book in China before he leave. Oh, I should remember he have one book, have a good opportunity in 1989 before Zum Vortrag. He with me in same time have one small book published in same publisher house, published Joseph Brodsky's big book. The published house name is Lijiang Publish House, based Guangxi. It's near Guangdong. So I should say it's not too far away, near Hong Kong. The published house published only one book for Meng Lang. Then he cannot publish anything in China. Later, he live in China, arrived to Brown University, spent 1 year as resident writer. So his most poetry, we should say this book called 25 Poems for Education. That poem, 25 poem, only one vocals. He tried each year, at least writing one poem, memory, 1989, Zum Vortrag. Zum Vortrag, sometimes we can say massacre, the 大屠杀. Also, we can say it's a student movement, or we can call it democracy movement, but not success. So many people get killed and so many people in jail. Also, so many intellectual or political dissident, exile. Meng Lang's poem, that book, English Chinese bilingual, the only for one focus. Each year, Zum Vortrag, before Zum Vortrag, he wrote one poem about Zum Vortrag. I think so in our generation, no anybody like him, each year writing poetry, memory, and talk about Zum Vortrag. The book published 2005. The book have a great influence for exile society because Zum Vortrag made so many people have opportunity each year have a memorial. So Meng Lang one time gave great reading about Zum Vortrag. That poetry also memory Taiwan 1947 February 28th, last day of February in Taiwan Kuomintang army, or I should say Jiang Kai-shi government, it's killing so many people because they against Kuomintang government arrived to Taiwan, try control everything. So Meng Lang the poem compare Zum Vortrag and 2000, compare Zum Vortrag and February 28th. from China, from Beijing, and from Taipei. So I like people can reading his English translation. So, and I think so if you already give people the translation, the 2 point, it's the first one. Yeah. So maybe they can send in our, yeah, share the file, yeah, the meeting, yes. Okay. So maybe we can listening Menglang reading this poem. I want people can little bit voice Chinese, the Chinese reading and reading English translation. Okay. I think so everybody should just listening by yourself. Then listening his reading and reading the paper. So maybe from now, I also want to listening that one too. You can collect this reading. The Chinese name called 数字之伤,数字之痛. Okay, I want people can read it, listening and reading his Chinese translation. Okay, so it's a very long poem. We should stop. Yeah. Let me try. Yeah, they continue. Okay, yeah. So if you know, I should say that long poem especially focus on one theme. Maybe Professor Sofo, you can give our maybe translation. 就是说这个是重要的一个 focus 是什么？是宽恕和记忆，不是遗忘。Maybe yeah, you can give yeah more clearly, you know, translation.
Yeah, so he wants to say that the most important message of this poem is Quanshu, which means kind of tolerance, or yeah, how to say in German or in English, I don't even know. Großherzigkeit, something like that.
Forgiven. Forgiven.
No, forgiveness.
Forgiven, yeah.
Yes, and memory, and what was Hayosamana?
Memory and yeah, remember and not forget. 就是绝不遗忘.
Yes, and yes, remembering.
Yeah. Remember, yes. So that's, I should say, it's a poetry, never like, you know, like our generation never like this situation, because one important history, Zum Vortrag, made so many poems through all different kind of poets in our, especially in our generation. That our generation, I should say, from 40 to 70 years old. Old generation in that time, it's 30 years ago, they are like only 40 years old. But currently, they are already 70. But the younger time people, 30 years ago, they are like a teenager. But they still can see this history. In our history, only have 2 books focus 2 things. One called Zum Vortrag Poetry Selected. That book, it's over 400-500 poems from different writer, a different poet, writing same moment, also same memory. Menglang, this book's editor, he editing that important book. That book never have chance to publish in China, only can publish in Taiwan. I should say, in Chinese, we are so lucky because before we have Hong Kong and Taiwan have freedom express. We can publish all cannot publish in China's work, material, book, manhwa, everything. If we cannot publish in China, we have opportunity publishing in Taiwan and Hong Kong. But since 5 years ago, Hong Kong less and less have opportunity can publish this kind of work. Also, 5, 6 years ago, Motherland from Boston moved to stay America 8 years, then moved to Hong Kong, stay 10 years, near 10 years, then moved to Taiwan for 5, 6 years. That means since Hong Kong freedom express less and less, he chose going to stay in Taiwan. He editing and published this important poem book called Zum Vortrag, Poetry Selected. That book, it's strongly gave people we remember. But his poem also say we have to, 宽恕, because if we cannot forget, but we have to think this history, we have to peacefully face. This I think the poetry is importantly, sometimes they not only weakness, they just want keep memory and remember. So Zum Vortrag made one poetry book, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China, mainland China's poet. Second important book, also over 300-400 poetry, just writing one thing. That one thing is called Liu Xiabo Memory Poetry Book. That book especially focus on one thing. July 13, 2017, Liu Xiabo died. We should say he died in jail. Formerly, he died in hospital, but he's still in jail time. His death made so many poetry, especially, poet writing poetry memory, the special pain, special shock, and a special person. Liu Xiabo deeply involved literature and deeply writing poetry, but most people didn't know. He's writing poetry in jail, but not in this time's jail. He's writing his poetry in before jail time. In his life, have 3-4 times in jail. Longest 11 years. Short time, 1 more years. He wrote lots of poetry in his 3 years labor camp. So the poetry most for his wife, because if you cannot writing letter for wife, writing poetry, love poetry for his wife, that's also good memory. But this memory book, including so many poets, they writing this special moment, his death time. So in our history, these two important book gave strongly history. Poetry never separate with politics. sometimes poetry can give good memory. That's why I should say, one day, if in China could be, like a freedom. I always say freedom more important compared to democracy. Freedom means have freedom express. The magazine publish house can freely publish anything. Also, maybe we do not control, like a new media, like Facebook, Twitter can freely used for all Chinese. In that time, these two books should be in our history. The two books both published in Taiwan. I cannot counting which year the book published in China, but the book already here. We never lost this memory. This I should say, it's a Motherland, it's a great work. So I think so that also gave our specially situation in China. In my essay, the paper, also I have a very interesting thought or very special thought. I just want to let people know currently in Burma, in that place, in that country, the poet killing one by one. One poet got killing because they did a demonstration. They writing poetry, then they get killed. That situation happening in Burma. Also, I should say, this situation, because like a labor camp, also people disappeared. I always think about Manchester in communist Russia time. Which kind of situation made him suddenly, dead? Also, one interesting story in our generation, always think why that happening. I remember, I don't know if here have some Russian scholar, maybe could give some answer. In our literature society, we have a very interesting story. Say, in 1930, Stalin one night suddenly make a phone call for Pasternak. Just tell him I'm Stalin. I just want to ask you, who is Manchester? Did he writing poem or good poem? So then Pasternak say, he's good poet. He writing good poem. I just remember the story say, just after he listening that 2 or 3 sentences, he hang up his phone. Maybe then Manchester spend another several years can, get better, just because maybe 1 minute is starting think about Manchester, it should be, like his own life. That story strongly, gave us this memory, I should say. In China, even we writing so many poetry, even poet stay, some, it's briefly, standing in our history, but we still think it's do not like Curtis, Burma, also like last century, 20th century, it's early of 30th century or the middle of 30th century, like even like, Blonsky, situation. So poetry in China never faced to this kind of situation. Also, the government never like Russia, Soviet Union, or like Burma. They just want to stop their life. Poet life also, they think it's a poetry make they are scary. In China, maybe do not like this situation. This I just give some, questions, give some thought in my essay. I do not give any answer or say some good or not good. I just want to say this situation happened because poet exile like Motherland, but means he get freedom, freedom mind, freedom image. He can writing, never worry the poem cannot publish or make some scary things happening. But in same our generation's writer and poet in China in current time, most poetry just have to without this kind of situation, because writer in exile or poet in exile within China's poet, we think so it's a little bit separately occurring. We do not have like 1980 or 1990s or like Zum Vortrag or Liu Xiabo that time. So we did a totally two kind of different writing. So that's why in my poetry, I should say, poet in exile sometimes make them dead early, but they have, spiritually, they are freedom. Motherland, dead 57, another essayist, great and good essayist and a good translator for Runge. His name is Wang Yiliang. He's dead in 58. They both, our exile literature magazine, important editor and important writer, or poet and writer. So maybe exile made people not have a long life and long time, on life, but they published the writing is a lot of good work. So that's why I gave this memory and give this thought. This is why I should say poetry in our situation always let us can compare former Eastern Europe, Soviet Union time. This is why I always remember it's Czesław Miłosz. He gave me, we get chance, stay together, 4 people stay together, reading together. And I with him and Maxim Honkinston. This is another, born America's writer. Also another famous, a great translator. He translated so many Russian poets. His name is Fei. In 20 years ago, he translation Russian poetry because his university is a Russian department studying. So he did the translation. We stay outside waiting for he gave us his one poem about Mandelstam's work or another for Gui Minhai. This kind of poet, we suddenly, have opportunity through his translation directly from Russian to Chinese. Because before we probably reading more like Pushkin. We write so many, romantic Russian poet or Russian literature work. But this kind of writer, through some good translator, published in China, I should say this in our memory is very special. Yes, so poetry with politics, I use some different history and my memory. I just gave this good question and a good answer. So for exile, how I should say it's how strongly give people memory. Also, I always think about what means a motherland. Motherland just like a language. This also I gave this one Motherland's poem. That poem talk about motherland, homeland with language. So this translation, I think so people can get chance, can read it. I think maybe I do not need reading his poetry use Chinese. People can through the paper, it's work, because probably his reading his work is much better than, it's I reading. So the poetry already, next before he reading the poem, I wish people can have chance can read. So today I think so you all can through my paper some photo. Maybe I want to show a little bit of photo, give some, special for me. It's important, his, memory. Let me show several photos, then people can know. So Anne can maybe can, yes, yeah, show the photo again. Some we just very soon. It's just past. Yeah, the Motherland. Then I should say it's before, like yeah, this is Motherland reading in some university. I'm listening. He reading his work. Okay, next one. That I should say that's is Motherland last. He's suddenly flew down in airport. Then his hand is all black. He never clearly mind. Before 3 days, he's in 2017 February Taipei International Book Fair. The close address is a poetry. It's a Liu Xiabo Memorial Poetry Selected Book. The called press or called new book reading event. He introduced Liu Xiabo Memorial Book, poetry book. You can see, have a big photo. It's a Liu Xiabo with his wife in his last, before Liu Xiabo died, it's the last month. Chinese government let his wife going to hospital, stay with him. I think so. It's 1 more month. This important, the photo is to show people his last work before his death. His last work, editing and published Liu Xiabo Memorial Poetry Book. He introduced this book in close day, Taipei International Book Fair. Oh, sorry, it's 278. This, yeah, it's 278 Book Fair. He's passed away in after one year, but he's flew down. He cannot see anything. After this poetry new book, it's it's a percent 3 days. Okay, I think so. Before I have another few photo, we can a little bit show. Yeah, yeah, this is I with Susan Sontag, in his home in New York. I still remember after I released, Susan very happy. He wrote a very important article, talk about my work and my situation, why in jail. So that she told me, this article published New York Times and Frankfurt Allgemeine, the both. So I still remember I with her have a very good memory, and she gave me lots of teaching. Okay, so another photo, maybe like 13 years. this is Seamus. After his reading in Harvard, I can have good, it's a moment. Can listening. I'm in Harvard at least listening his poetry reading more than 3-4 times. So each time I feel it's great. Even I cannot understand every sentence, but still it's great. This is in 1998. Yeah, he's gave reading. Each year he spent 1 month called resident poet for Harvard University. Since he win Nobel Prize, then quit professor position. Okay, maybe up. Yeah, this is Paul Celan's poetry book. So Matthias maybe want to ask me some question later. We can talk. So that poetry book, for me, it's important because if you want reading his poetry, only way through directly translation from German to Chinese. So that book, I still remember in my bookcase have over 700 pages bilingually, German, Chinese. That book, if I'm traveling before, I'm always carry the book. If I can reading one poem, I can feel I'm not alone because Celan, his poetry more touched me. Also, he have so many readers since his book became Chinese. Okay, so 11, I think. Yeah, this is Czesław Miłosz. I made this photo because I with him stay together, see each other only one time in San Francisco. So that time I just make one photo. Laterly, we only through letter. He gave me his work, then we transition his work, then publish our literature magazine, his tendency. I still remember he wrote a short essay, Memory Joseph Brodsky. We did one special issue for Joseph Brodsky. He gave us his piece, small but strong. Not too many words, but very good. Okay, so maybe, oh yeah, I just want to tell a little bit about this. Currently, he's still in detention centers, Chinese poet Wang Zhang. He met German president in German embassy in Beijing. Currently, he already stayed in detention center 376 days. Not going to court, not give to any reason, just in detention center, never have any information. This is a situation happening currently in China. Poet, just writing poetry and maybe speech, talking something made regime angry. He's not do anything. If he do something, they can very soon, have a court, give him some kind of, like a 3 years jail or 4 years jail. Now just in detention center, near 400 days. Okay, so he have 4 children. His wife also separate him in another detention room, just because since Wang Zhang get rest, he's every day speak out, also pick up phone from journalists, tell people, my husband, no reason. One day they catch him leave, never back. Currently, he also over 215 days with Wang Zhang in different detention room in same city called Chuxiong in Yunnan. His 4 children currently no parents take care. This is emotional photo. Every time I saw this photo, I think such happy family, such good family. Now, children cannot see parents. Long time. Okay. So his poetry do not have chance. So another Liu Yu, probably most German people, German writer or German scholar probably know. He's based at Berlin. He's a win Frankfurt Book Fair. It's an important award. He's a publisher. His most book in S. Fisher, the published house. I call him, he's in 4 years in jail because he wrote long poem mentioned Zum Vortrag in same year, 1989. 4 years in jail just because of one long poetry. The name is 大屠杀, massacre. That poetry, he give reading, have one short tape recording. His copy, then send it to different people, then police get it. But he's exiled. Currently, he exiled in Germany, probably 10 years. Several days ago, he told me he just got a German passport. This is such luckily he live in China, confidently writing his work. Okay. So maybe another photo, probably, yeah, this is Joseph Brodsky. I just want to mention this kind of photo is always give me a lot of, image. So he's in Soviet, he is in Russian time. Also laterly, he's living in New York. So he with, Joseph, he with Shemskini, also he with Susan Sontag, also close friendship. Okay, so I think so. I probably already spent quite more time. Some photo we just already see. So or later, this is as a Fengzhi. It's I thought it's his translation and Rilke's work strongly influenced us in 1980 or 1990s. So later he became party member. And the parties, it's take care. He also is 外国文学研究所所长 in China, Academy, Foreign Literature Institute, director. Okay, so, all right, maybe I think so. That's work. It's okay. So lately I have several like 8. Yeah, probably it's most photo. It's there. So I finished this talk, and maybe we can, discussion, or we can, I want to listening, all, scholar from different countries. We can really talk. Matthias should be, we have a good talk and several days ago. So very, very, very good. It's share lots of, great poet or great writers feeling. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bei Ling, for this interesting, for sharing with your thoughts with us.